On January 14, 1939, Rabindranath Tagore wrote to Subhash Chandra Bose from Shantiniketan that he wished to organize a national reception for him in Calcutta in early February. It was then that Rabindranath wrote his famous Deshanayak composition. Although the reception in Calcutta had to be postponed, Rabindranath wrote again on the 17th of January, reaffirming his support for Subhash Chandra. And then on the 21st of January 1939, Rabindranath Tagore welcomed in his abode of peace, Shantiniketan, the rebel president of the Indian National Congress. Subhash Chandra Bose's contest against Gandhi's nominee for the post of Congress president was just over a week away. Here, in this mango grove, Rabindranath gave a warm reception to Subhash Chandra. The relationship between these two distinguished personalities of international fame, Rabindranath Tagore and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, is a fascinating theme in the modern history of Bengal and India. The poet and the patriot came to share a common vision, the vision of an enlightened and dignified expression of Indian nationality and universal humanity. Yet, during the early phase of Subhash's political career, despite a good measure of mutual admiration, the two regarded each other with some reservation. But as time passed, the two were drawn closer together. Their relationship was undoubtedly at their most intimate during the political crisis of 1939, when Subhash Chandra Bose had a critical showdown with the Gandhian wing of the Indian National Congress. Throughout that crisis, Rabindranath Tagore gave Subhash unstinting and affectionate support. The evolution of their relationship was best captured by Rabindranath himself in his 1939 composition, Deshanayak, in which he hailed Subhash Chandra as the leader of the country. Rabindranath wrote, "Subhash Chandra, I have watched the dawn that witnessed the beginning of your political sadhana. In that uncertain twilight, there had been misgivings in my heart, and I had hesitated to accept you for what you are now. Today, you are revealed in the pure light of the midday sun, which does not admit of apprehensions. You have come to absorb varied experiences during these years. Today, you bring to bear your mature mind and irrepressible vitality to bear upon the work at hand. Your strength has sorely been taxed by imprisonment, banishment, and disease, but rather than impairing, these have helped to broaden your sympathies, enlarging your vision so as to embrace the vast perspectives of history beyond any narrow limits of territory." The poet and the patriot met for the first time in July 1921. Subhash Chandra Bose had just taken the most decisive step of his life, having resigned from the ICS to join the non-violent non-cooperation movement. And here, by a remarkable coincidence, he was traveling back from Europe to India in the same ship as Rabindranath Tagore, the great poet who nearly 2 decades later was to hail him as the leader of the people. Subhash Chandra later wrote in his book, The Indian Struggle, "The poet arrived in Bombay from Europe about the middle of July. As a matter of fact, I traveled in the same boat with him. During our voyage, I had occasion to discuss with him the new policy of non-cooperation adopted by the Congress." Subhash Chandra has recorded that Rabindranath was concerned about the boycott of educational institutions. He wanted much more of a constructive program, remembering the difficulties that boycott of schools had created during the Swadeshi movement.
Rabindranath Tagore's reservation about Mahatma Gandhi's non-cooperation movement had two sides. One, he was against the complete break with Western civilization, because he felt that Western civilization and culture had indeed a good effect on us. The other objection on the poet's side was this, that the boycott of educational institutions would be harmful. After all, these students were the future citizens of India, maybe independent India. So it would be wrong to deprive them of education before we had a real good alternative.
Subhash Chandra felt, however, that Rabindranath was more opposed to Mahatma Gandhi's personal views on modern science and medicine, rather than the political program of the Congress as such. Even so, on his return to India, the poet gave a forceful speech, Subhash Chandra has written, in Calcutta, called The Unity of Culture. The poet was extremely concerned that Indian culture should not be divorced from the culture and civilization of the rest of the world. The Congress found it difficult to find a literary man of the stature of Rabindranath to give a reply. But finally, Subhash Chandra writes in his book, The Indian Struggle, that Sharath Chandra Chattopadhyay, the novelist, was persuaded to provide a response. Sharath Chattopadhyay wrote an address called The Conflict of Cultures, in which he argued that even though culture had a universal basis, every nation also devised a specific culture suited to its own genius. Subhash Chandra had been a great admirer of the poet Rabindranath Tagore since his early childhood. In 1911 and 1912, he wrote a number of letters to his elder brother, Sharath Chandra Bose. In these letters, he lamented that Bengalis had not shown due honor to the great poet before he was awarded the Nobel Prize. In one of his letters, Subhash Chandra wrote to elder brother Sharath, "You will perhaps hear and read a good deal about the Bengali poet and venerable sage Rabindranath Tagore. We feel so proud to read of him and the high honor shown to him by an alien people, that for a time we become optimistic about the future of Bengal and of India. I am almost stung with self-reproach when I think how indifferent Bengal has been in showering laurels upon him, and has suffered his genius, superhuman though it is, to lie in the shade of neglect. Whereas a foreign people speaking an alien tongue, cherishing ideas and sentiments diametrically opposed to ours in some cases, have lifted him up from this shade to sunshine, and have extolled him as the greatest poet the world has produced. What a strange people we are. We have so little of reverence in us. I hope a time will come when I shall be able to appreciate the poems of Ravi Thakur." Subhash Chandra Bose came to appreciate Rabindranath Tagore's songs and poetry most deeply as a prisoner in Mandalay jail in the mid-1920s. When he was a prisoner in Burma, Subhash Chandra kept an exercise book in which he wrote down his favorite songs, including, of course, Tagore's famous Amar Sonar Bangla, Ami Tomaye Bhalobashi. In a letter to Sharath Chandra Chattopadhyay from Mandalay jail, he wrote, "If I had not been here, I would never realize the depth of my love for golden Bengal. I sometimes feel as if Tagore expressed the emotions of a prisoner when he wrote, Sonar Bangla ami tomaye bhalobashi, chirodin tomar akash tomar batash, amar prane bajaye banshi. When even for a moment the vision of Bengal's variegated beauty rises before my mind's eye, I have the realization that going through all this trouble and coming to Mandalay have been worthwhile. Who knew before that there was so much of charm hidden in the soil of Bengal, in her waters, in her skies and air? Rabindranath Tagore, in turn, dedicated his dance drama, Tasher Desh, to Subhash Chandra Bose, nearly 10 years later, in the middle of the 1930s. But in the early 1930s, the relationship between Subhash Chandra and Rabindranath had been a little strained. Prior to his departure for Europe in February 1933, Subhash Chandra had asked Rabindranath for a letter of introduction to friends in Europe. Rabindranath gave a rather formal letter saying Subhash Chandra Bose, his friend, was going to Europe for reasons of health, and he may please be given all necessary assistance. Subhash Chandra didn't like the letter, and he never used it. He expressed his feelings to Rabindranath later, when in another letter in 1934, he asked Rabindranath whether he would put in a word to either H.G. Wells or Bernard Shaw to write a foreword to Subhash's book, The Indian Struggle. But, Subhash told Rabindranath, he must not write anything in the spirit of the introductory letter that he had been given in 1933. Subhash went on to say that he could not ask Rabindranath himself to write the foreword to his book because the Indian struggle contained some criticisms of Mahatma Gandhi, and that even though Rabindranath had been critical of Gandhiji in the past, he had by now become a, quote, blind follower, unquote, of the Mahatma. Upon Subhash Chandra Bose's return from his European exile, there was a distinct warming in his relationship with Rabindranath Tagore. When the Bande Mataram controversy erupted with full force on the All India political stage, Subhash decided that the Congress should seek Rabindranath's guidance and advice in this matter. Rabindranath argued that the first part of the song stood on its own. He himself had set tune to it in the late 19th century. It had an inspirational quality which was not offensive to any religious community. The Congress accepted Tagore's advice and resolved that henceforth only the first verse of the Bande Mataram song would be sung at national meetings. Bengal's two luminaries, Rabindranath Tagore and Subhash Chandra Bose, came in for some strong criticism in certain Hindu circles. Even though Subhash Chandra decided to end his presidential address at Haripura with the slogan Bande Mataram.
There is no power on earth that can keep India enslaved anymore. Let us fight for India's freedom, Bande Mataram.
He refused to entertain any controversy over the decision to abridge the song. So in 1938, on the occasion of the birth centenary of Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, the whole song Bande Mataram was banished from the platform of India's premier nationalist party. Towards the end of 1938, Subhash Chandra Bose declared his intention of seeking a second term as president of the Indian National Congress. Rabindranath Tagore wrote to both Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru, stating his desire to see Subhash elected a second term as Congress president. Rabindranath Tagore also asked Jawaharlal Nehru to come and visit him in Shantiniketan. In another letter from Tagore's secretary Anil Chandra, it became clear what Rabindranath wanted to discuss with Jawaharlal. Rabindranath believed that there were only two true modernists in the Indian National Congress. Since Subhash Chandra Bose had already appointed Nehru as chairman of the National Planning Committee, he wanted Subhash Chandra Bose as president again so that the two modernists could shape the destiny of free India together. Gandhi, however, wrote to Rabindranath Tagore, unequivocally opposing Subhash Chandra Bose's candidature for a second term as Congress president. Rabindranath Tagore had expressed his sorrow to Subhash Chandra Bose that his own countrymen had not fully understood him, nor had they appreciated his work at Shantiniketan. He asked Subhash Chandra to take a look around the campus and try to lighten his burden if he could. Subhash Chandra said in his reply to Rabindranath, "It is unfair to expect that ordinary people or ordinary Indians will realize your comprehensive sadhana. There is a sense of pain and remorse inside you that your countrymen failed to know you. They did not understand your sadhana. But should you for that reason blame your countrymen? If they could understand you so easily, they would be your equals."
His idea of education was based on allowing the child's own creative mind to develop by itself, and he wanted a direct interaction with nature. He brought the child outside the four walls of the classroom and put him in direct interaction with nature, and he wanted that as the child grows up, he should develop an independent thinking. He should be able to think for himself and take decisions for himself. It must not be imposed on him.
During the political crisis that stretched from Subhash's re-election as Congress president on 29th January 1939 to his resignation on 29th April 1939, Subhash received strong support from Rabindranath Tagore. Although it was contrary to his nature, the poet sought to intervene directly in the political turmoil within the Congress. He wrote to Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru repeatedly, asking them to prevent a fratricidal and enervating conflict in the Indian National Congress. The spirit of vendetta displayed by Subhash Bose's opponents at the Tripuri Congress in early March 1939 left Tagore greatly agitated. On March 29, 1939, he wrote to Gandhi, "Dear Mahatma Ji, at the last Congress session, some rude hands have upset Bengal with an ungracious persistence. Please apply without delay balm to the wound with your own kind hands and prevent it from festering." Gandhiji acknowledged the letter. "Dear Gurudev, I have your letter full of kindness." But he remained non-committal on the issue of assuaging Bengal's hurt feelings. To Subhash's wounds, the soothing balm was applied by Rabindranath himself. At Tripuri, Subhash Chandra Bose had been gravely ill. But his political opponents, including Vallabhbhai Patel, did not spare him for that. There was even an insinuation that Subhash's illness was a sham. Tagore was deeply hurt. He saw that the infamous Panth resolution was being passed while Subhash lay sick in his bed. So the very next day, Tagore drafted a letter in his own hand to Subhash. We have been anxious for you, and there is still cause for anxiety that in your ailing health you are burdened with difficult Congress work. I hope that with adequate nursing and care, you are on the way to recovery, and there will be no delay in the fulfillment of the plan I have of honoring you on behalf of the Bengali nation. In late April 1939, the Gandhian wing of the Congress High Command forced Subhash Chandra Bose to put in his resignation. In his statement, Subhash said, "I am placing my resignation in your hands in an entirely helpful spirit." Rabindranath Tagore then sent Subhash Chandra Bose a telegram. "The dignity and forbearance which you have shown in the midst of a most aggravating situation has won my admiration and reaffirmed my confidence in your leadership."
Tagore gave one of his famous addresses, which had resonance with the past, which was Deshanoyok. There had been a Deshanoyok lecture by Tagore in the beginning of the 20th century about a leader who was not yet there. Then in 1939, he gave a second Deshanoyok lecture, but this time there was a Deshanoyok, and that was Subhash. And at the end of that lecture, he said, "Long ago, I sent out a call for the leader of Bengal, who has yet to come. After a lapse of many years, I am addressing one who has come into the full light of recognition. My days have come to their end. I may not join him in the fight that is to come. I can only bless him, knowing that he had made his country's burden of sorrow his own, that his final reward is fast coming as his country's freedom."
When the Congress High Command took disciplinary action against Subhash Chandra Bose, Tagore wired to Gandhiji, "Owing gravely critical situation all over India, and especially in Bengal, would urge Congress Working Committee immediately to remove ban against Subhash and invite his cordial cooperation in supreme interest of national unity." Gandhi pleaded his inability, but he wrote in a letter to C.F. Andrews that no one had anything personal against Subhash. "As to me, he is a son," said Gandhiji. There was another proposal to ask Rabindranath Tagore to help resolve the crisis in the Indian National Congress, but the old guard of the Congress felt extremely uneasy at this. Rajendra Prasad had taken over as Congress President after Subhash Chandra Bose's resignation. Rajendra Prasad said, "It will be cruel to tax the poet with this work," and went on to add, "The matter is too complicated for Gurudev to resolve." Tagore did not fail to notice this lack of trust in him. On 12th August 1939, the formal resolution banning Subhash Chandra Bose from holding elective office within the Congress was passed by the AICC in Wardha. But Rabindranath paid absolutely no heed to that. Just a week later, the poet travelled down from Shantiniketan to Calcutta at the invitation of Subhash to lay the foundation stone of the Mahajati Sadan.
That was extremely exciting. A massive crowd had collected on Chittaranjan Avenue for the foundation stone laying ceremony of Mahajati Sadan. And Rabindranath arrived there, accompanied by my uncle Netaji and my father, and was seated on the dais. And I still remember I took quite a few pictures of that memorable occasion and heard both Netaji and Rabindranath speak of their dreams, of their aspirations, not only for Bengal, but for the whole of India.
বাংলা জাতির যে শক্তির প্রতিষ্ঠা করবার সংকল্প করেছি তা সেই রাষ্ট্রশক্তি নয় যে শক্তি শত্রু মিত্র সকলের প্রতি সংশয় সন্তর্কিত, জাগ্রত চিত্তকে আহ্বান করি, বাঙালির বাহু ভারতের বাহুকে বল দিক, বাঙালির বাণী ভারতের বাণীকে সত্য করুক।
The final meeting between the poet and the patriot had taken place in Jorashanko in July 1940. But within 2 hours of that meeting, Subhash Chandra was arrested and taken away to Presidency Jail. There he went on a hunger strike in late November 1940 and was released from prison on the 5th of December. He then was brought home to 38 by 2 Elgin Road and lived in this house for over a month. He used to lie on this bed, and during the month and a half between 5th December and mid-January, the escape plan was made foolproof in conversations with his nephew Shishir.
After this escape was formally disclosed on the 26th of January 1941, Ravindranath sent a telegram to my father expressing grave concern. And my father then replied to Ravindranath saying that wherever he may be, please let Subhash have your blessings.
Rabindranath Tagore died soon after. But at least before he passed from this world, he had an inkling that his Deshanayak was on the way to becoming India's Netaji.